Welcome back. We're joined by Douglas Murray, the founder and director of a superb organization in the United Kingdom, the Center for Social Cohesion. He has recently written in the Wall Street Journal a most important article, and it's always a good pretext to find you in the journal, Douglas Murray, to have a chance to catch up a bit. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about your essay and why we should all be paying attention.
Well, yes, very good to be with you, Frank, as always. The point I was trying to make, was this, that there's a very strange situation that America and Britain and other Western democracies have come to at the moment, which is that we seem in the current melee in the Middle East to be taking a rather new and novel approach to our foreign policy, which is basically this. You'll remember that the Bush administration, during Bush's first term, he famously said, you're either for us or against us. My argument here is that it seems that this is still the case, but those people who are for us, we're now against, and the people who are against us, we're now for. Let me give you a quick example. I mean, in 2009, when the people of Iran came out onto the streets to object against the terrible regime in Tehran, President Obama remained silent. He didn't speak out to say that the mullahs should step down, that Ahmadinejad should retire, or anything like this. It was silence. Just a few weeks ago, when the crowds came on the streets in Egypt, also rightly demanding that they didn't want to live under a dictatorship, but they were objecting to somebody who, with all of his faults, was nevertheless put down as an ally and a friend, albeit a bad friend, of America and Britain. And suddenly, Obama and Prime Minister David Cameron and others found their voice and demanded that Mubarak step down. And just in case anyone thought this was some just coincidence, an aberration, as it were, then we see Colonel Gaddafi in Libya getting into trouble with his people. And this bizarre sight, I mean, you couldn't invent a better enemy than Colonel Gaddafi. I mean, aside from his sponsorship of terrorism, aside from funding the IRA and bringing down airline planes over small Scottish villages and so on, and the most intransigent enemy of America and Britain and the Western democracies, this man finally finds himself on the receiving end of some crowd anger, starts gunning down his own people, and the most you can hear is the odd murmur about how terrible it is that he's gunning down his own people. But there's no Obama, no Cameron statement saying Colonel Gaddafi, his time and his family's time running Libya as a personal business of the Gaddafi dynasty is over. The Gaddafi era is over. Nobody's saying it. They go silent again. I think it's an utterly bemusing, counterintuitive period of American policy.
Let me ask you, Douglas Murray, my theory of the piece, and I think it applies in Libya, it certainly applies in Iran, of course, and it helps explain what went on in Egypt. There's one common denominator that, as best I can tell, is operating. And it's consistent with sort of the the theory of the piece that you just described of, no better friend to our enemies and no worse enemy to our friends. But there seems to be this consistent strand through the Obama approach to all of these melees, as you put them, namely that he does in every instance what would be best for the Islamists. And I wonder whether you find that to be an explanation that is compelling as I do.
Well, I mean, my own feeling is the reason why this has come about is broadly speaking, what you get at the end product of a liberal arts education in America these days, or the latter part of the 20th century, which is that effectively you don't think that America has the right to tell people what to do or what not to do. It's also hierarchical. It's also terribly 20th century to do that. And the fact is that nation states do have the right to stand up for their values. America has nothing it should stand up for more than to be on the side of people who desire freedom, who desire what the American people have. But somehow it's almost as if it's bad manners to do that.
But Douglas, if I may
what to do.
Yeah, if I may interrupt, that would apply to Libya, as you say. It would apply to Iran, but it doesn't explain telling Hosni Mubarak what to do, which is to get the hell out of town right away, by the way. And that's where I just wonder whether there might be something else going on here. But you have been following with great attentiveness, skill, and courage a creature who, in your own country, the United Kingdom, Douglas Murray, has become something of a specimen of this Islamist program, and about whom it seems nobody, perhaps with a few exceptions, including your good self, is able to say anything other than, let's accommodate him. Namely, this fellow Anjem Choudary. And you and I have talked about him on the air a number of times in the past. He is promising to come to Lafayette Square outside the White House here in the United States on the 3rd of March and carry on about how it's time for the United States to be subjected to Sharia. So not just Iran, not just Egypt, not just Libya, but the United States now, and indeed the world over. And I just wonder, it would be very helpful to get your take on this character and how seriously we should take the sorts of Sharia advocacy that he's engaged in, not simply because of himself and his work, but what it speaks to in the larger community of which he's a representative.
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing is that on one level, Anjem Choudary and his cohorts seem hilarious. I mean, they are opportunists, publicity seekers and so on. They don't miss an opportunity to, say that they're going to demand that the Queen step down and convert Britain to Sharia. They love this sort of headline-grabbing stuff. But the thing is this, you can't take them too jokingly. Because by our analysis at the Center for Social Cohesion, between 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 Islamists convicted of terrorism-related offences in the last decade has been a member of his group, a group that is now banned. One of the people he's proposing to bring into the U.S. in the coming days is somebody called Abu Izzadeen, and the real name is Omar Brooks. But Abu Izzadeen is a man who has been convicted of several very major offences in this country. He's been convicted for inciting murder for terrorist purposes overseas. He's been convicted under Terrorism Act of 2000 of fundraising for terrorist purposes. This is a very serious person, and Choudary is claiming to come into the U.S. with him and others to make these new outlandish demands on the U.S. So, I mean, I think that in a way he's a fascinating case, Choudary and his people, because as I say, on the one hand, they are utterly laughable. Their demands are beyond satire. And on the other hand, some of their members really mean it. Perhaps all of them. I personally think that Choudary doesn't believe a word of it. I think he's a publicity seeker. A few decades, if he hadn't have got radical Islam, he'd be on the X Factor. He's the sort of person who just loves attention, and he's found it this way. But the thing is that some of the people following him, some of the young men around him, have taken it very seriously indeed. And I think that, as so often, it's very funny until something detonates. It's very funny until something goes off.
Well, and Douglas, 2 points on that. One is that, as you say, there are lots of people who take this very seriously, whether he may be simply a publicity hound or whether he's giving expression to what Sharia dictates or not. It may be an interesting debate, but unfortunately, he is speaking for an awful lot of people who follow this. And it's happening, as you know, at a time when we're seeing people who seek to say so in your country, in the Netherlands, in Austria, and elsewhere in the continent, being suppressed, being denied the opportunity to speak about these dangers and what they constitute in terms of our freedoms. So, very, very 10-second response, if you have one.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the strange year we find ourselves in. That people who say the most blood-curdling thing, if they're Islamists, can get away with it, and the people who point the finger at them increasingly finding they can't do so legally. This is a big problem for Europe. It's a problem that'll come to America. Yeah,
I fear so. Well, we will be trying to stave it off, and I know we will be doing it with a great ally in you, Douglas Murray of the Center for Social Cohesion in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for finding some time for us here at Secure Freedom Radio.